One of the most defining moments of my professional career was at the 2015 World Cup. 3 games in, haven't seen the field yet. I'm devastated. And I'm at the World Cup, and everybody from the outside probably assumes I'm living my dream. I'm at the pinnacle of my career and I'm happy, and I wasn't.
Kelley O'Hara was the #1 college soccer player in the United States, has 2 World Cup titles and an Olympic gold medal.
I was never the biggest or the most skilled. That led me to realize, okay, if you want this, if this is what you really want, you do have to put in the work. You have to spend time with the ball.
In this episode of Real Relationships, Real Revenue, she'll share how to have a vision that can help you translate your longer-term goals into actions you need to take today.
Go into these practices and play as hard as possible, like you're at a game. So when I was given the opportunity, if I was given that opportunity, I was ready.
And how to develop systems in your business development career so you can take 100% control over the outcome you're building toward.
It was such a defining moment in my career of like, you can only control what you can control, and you have to learn how to deal with the rest.
I want you to drop us into a moment where things were not so easy, where you struggled, where you had a moment where whatever you're doing wasn't leading you down the path you wanted to be. Tell us about that moment, that struggle, and how did habits, since habits are the story of the season, tell us about habits led you out of that.
It is interesting because I do think a lot of people see professional athletes and they think, oh, they came from a really good gene pool. And I did. Thankfully, mom and dad were very athletic, so I was blessed with that. But there are so many things that come just out of hard work and determination and mentality and that sort of thing. This is the story that I always tell about what was probably one of the most defining moments of my professional career, I guess just soccer in general, was at the 2015 World Cup. I had played in 2011. I went to that World Cup, barely made that team. 2012 Olympics, won a gold medal. I'm at the 2015 World Cup, probably 3 games in, haven't seen the field yet, and I'm devastated. And I'm at the World Cup as this soccer player, as this footballer at the World Cup. And everybody from the outside probably assumes I'm living my dream. I'm at the pinnacle of my career and I'm happy. And I wasn't. I was obviously very stoked to be there and to be on that team and to be a part of that journey. But personally, I was struggling, and probably struggling the most I maybe ever had in my career, because I was at that mountaintop of what a footballer strives to get to, which is the World Cup. But I wasn't playing. And I just remember being like, I'm living my dream, but I'm not. I'm at a place where I can be fulfilling this dream, but I'm not, because I'm not playing. And that was such a difficult time for me. It was probably one of the hardest months I went through. And I approached it in a way that was like, you're at the World Cup and you're not playing. What do you have to do to get on that field? And for me, I was focused on not allowing other people to know that I was upset that I wasn't playing, because this happens day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out, for everybody, for tons of players. You sometimes play, you sometimes don't. So it's just something they have to deal with. But being at the World Cup, not getting on the field, not seeing any field, not getting subbed in, nothing, not starting, it was difficult. It was hard. It was probably the worst. Yeah, like I said, the worst. So, and when I tell this story, it's about I figured out in that time period that it was about looking inside of myself and figuring out this self-confidence truly comes from within. I wasn't getting it from the coaches because I wasn't playing. And my teammates, there was a couple that were supportive because they knew that I was bummed out, that sort of thing, but I wasn't showing it. So, and that's all to say, I was still trying to be the best teammate I possibly could for everybody else so that we as a team could win. And that to me is a very important thing. You can be pissed off, you can be bummed out, you can be disappointed in your own personal situation, but you still have to show up and be a good teammate. So I was doing that, but then I was like, what do I need to do to get me to I'm not playing and I want to be playing. What do I have to do to get there? And I was like, I'm not going to be able to prove it on the field in terms of in a game. I'm not being subbed in. So what do I have to do? And I made up my mind. I got to a place where I was like, the only opportunity you have is at practice. And you need to go into every single practice during this time period at the World Cup. And it's when just the subs are playing, the game changers go out and practice. The starters aren't there or aren't really practicing, and approach every practice like it's a World Cup final. You don't get to play in the game, but you can go into these practices and play as hard as possible, like you're at a game. And I did that for two reasons. I wanted to prove that I was mentally engaged, that I was ready, that I was just totally locked in. And then also I wanted to prepare myself so when I was given the opportunity, if I was given that opportunity, I was ready. And that was locking in and honing those habits that you have leading into World Cup, but they could kind of start to slip away even after a couple weeks if you're not like being a savage on the field, which is kind of what I try to be. So yeah, I would say that would be the hardest moment of my career where I took a step back, evaluated what I needed to do, and then put certain things into place and approached it in a way that I knew maybe it won't give me the exact outcome I want, but it's going to hopefully get me from here to somewhere else. I'm not going to stay in this spot.
Yeah, and it sounds like you pulled back to sort of perceive what was going on in the situation. What could you do that was 100% in your control?
Exactly.
And then you did it. And it makes me think of Ryan Holiday's summary of Stoic philosophy is perception, action, will. Perception is this awful thing I'm thinking really as bad as I think, or how should I perceive it? Action, what can I do that's in my control to move forward? And will, to have tremendous, yeah, I've seen him use two definitions there. One is willingness to just go at it, be a savage on the field. I love that. But also willingness to accept what we can't change and say, hey, I'm just going to focus on what I can control. And it seems like, I mean, you might not have been using those three exact things, but it seems like in general, you sort of were.
Yeah, I would say so. And I love that. Perception, action, will. That's a cool way to look at it. And that taught me a lot about myself, about what I needed to feel confident and be the best player I can be, but then also not acting on emotion or allowing emotion to rule my actions.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I was thinking, oh, I'm going to go ask the coach, what do I need to do? How do I get on the field? Emotion, that was my emotion driving that. And I was like, and my logic said, absolutely not. This isn't the time nor the place. Like, you're at the World Cup. The coach needs to focus on winning.
Yeah.
Our problem is not whether you're playing or not. Her problem is whether you're ready to play when she asks you to play. And that's what I have to focus on. So yeah, I like that a lot. That's good.
Yeah. Well, funny side note is my daughters both love cats, and perception, action, will spells paw. So like it's the tiger.
Remember it.
Well, so what happened? Tell the audience what ended up happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I didn't play so there's 7 games from start to finish World Cup, and to make to the final. And I didn't play until the 5th game, didn't see the field. And that was the quarterfinals against China. And I ended up actually starting that game. 2 players had accumulated too many yellow cards, so they had to sit.
Mm-hmm.
And our coach was basically had to figure out, what pieces do I plug in? Who do I use to win this game when 2 of our starters can't play? And I got the call up and I started that game and we won that game. And then we went on to the semifinals. We were playing Germany and I got put in with probably 15, 17 minutes left. We were up 1-0, told, we need you to defend. We need you to finish out this game. Ended up scoring my first goal ever for the national team, which is crazy, in that semifinal to seal a 2-0 win. And that was kind of sealing the deal. We're going to the finals of the World Cup. And then I got subbed into the final. So going from not even stepping over the line, not even getting subbed into the 90th minute to close out games in the first 4 games of a World Cup, and then playing in each of the last 3 games. It was crazy. But it was awesome because it was such a defining moment in my career of like, you can only control what you can control, and you have to learn how to deal with the rest. And I feel like that was such a learning moment for me.
Yeah, I love that story. And I just love opening up with stories like that, starting with where we struggle and how do we get out of it. But first, I really want to hit the idea that learning that anything really complex is both learned and earned. And the reason I want to hit this from an athlete perspective, from your unique perspective here, is that so many people, when they think about business development, our audience is folks that have a deep expertise, and then they have to bolt onto that expertise the skill of finding people to purchase it, creating a great buy-in experience, if you will. How have you attacked learning? How have you become the footballer you've become and probably hit different plateaus at times and things like that? Tell us about how you think about learning the skill.
I think it goes back to being a kid. And I was born competitive, I would say, but I wasn't born a soccer player by any means. And I was probably born more athletic than the average Joe, just by luck of the draw. But I played tons of different sports growing up, and that fed that competitive fire in me. And I really didn't focus on soccer until I was early teenage years, probably 15. Or maybe, I guess, yeah, that's mid. And before that, I mean, I was never the biggest or the most skilled. Maybe some days I was the fastest, but I certainly wasn't always. And I had a lot of shortcomings in those early years. I had a lot of disappointments that led me to realize, okay, if you want this, if this is what you really want, you do have to put in the work. And I think that taught me from an early stage that if you want to be get good with the ball, you have to spend time with the ball. You have to do that. You have to do those things. If you want to be able to score that type of goal in a game, you have to do that in practice. And it's hours and hours. So I think that, I guess as an athlete, I feel like athletes learn that from an early stage. And I actually think that's why they're very good at business, because they know that it does take time. It's going to take shortcomings. It's going to take failure. And to not let those define you, but let those teach you. And for me, that I think that's just what I've always come back to, is that like, you're going to fail, but then how do you evaluate that failure so that it doesn't happen again? Mistakes happen, shortcomings happen, losses happen, but how do you figure out how they don't become a pattern? And so, yeah, I would say that I think my teenage years really helped define how I approach football in my career. And then I would say through my 20s, I learned a lot about, and like when I turned professional, I learned a lot about doing the work on your own, because we have an off season. That those are the times when we really get to hone our craft and get stronger, get fitter, get faster. And, and those, and you kind of have to, you don't necessarily always have somebody telling you what to do. You have guidance and that sort of thing, but there's a lot of ability to learn what you need. And I've evolved my training plan throughout the years. And I'm always trying to learn more about myself and about what's out there to make me the best athlete and footballer that I can be.
Yeah, and I think that what's so striking about that is I think athletes have this incredible, almost like an ability to learn, that every time you saw a scenario and it didn't go your way, I bet you hung on to that moment for weeks or months to learn how to shift left or right faster or dribble in a certain way or make a pass in this direction when everybody thought it was going to go that direction or whatever. And it's almost like athletes see scenarios in their head, I think, and then they're getting really good at all those scenarios. And the same can be true of business development. It is way too complex of a skill, just that you're just born being programmed how to do it. Okay? There's scenarios. There's what happens when you introduce somebody, what happens when you give a speech at a conference, what happens when you run into somebody that you didn't know you would, but they're a perfect prospect. And what do you do in those scenarios, just like you're running scenarios? It reminds me, there's a great researcher, Dr. Anders Ericsson. He's out of Florida State. and he's the worldwide expert on expertise. And he's found that do you know him?
So no, I love that. The worldwide expert on expertise. That's
Yeah,
such
the expert on experts. Isn't that a good pick? Right?
yeah, it is.
And he's studied it all and he's found that if something's really simple, you can be born with it if it just takes one quick thing. But anything that comes complex, nobody's born with the whole package. So tell us about how you just approach learning. Like, go get really specific. Like, let's say you encounter something you haven't encountered before and you want to get better at that thing. What do you do?
Yeah, I think so. I think the reason why you like going back to your first point, athletes are good at learning and developing is because a lot of athletes, when there's a skill involved in their sport, you can never be perfect. You're never going to have a perfect game. Some people might tout certain players having perfect games, but in reality, I've never seen it or heard of it, or I've never done it either. And so it's this constant striving towards perfection that might not be attainable. But then that keeps you almost motivated because you're never going to be, you want to be perfect, but you probably aren't going to get there, but you're still going to damn well try to get there.
Yeah.
And there's so many components that go into that. And I would say that in terms of like, what do I do? Our games and I think this is the best example for us, and that can be applied to business development. So whether you have like a meeting, a pitch, a job interview, that's like our games.
Yes.
And after every game, I have a sense of, wow, that went really well. We won, that went okay, or that didn't feel good. And I assume, and I think that's the case with meetings, pitches, job interviews, whatever, in business development. You're going to have that. Something's going to happen. And then after, you're going to have a sense or feeling of good, bad, mediocre. But then it's breaking down, okay, why do I feel this way? What was it about it? Why was that a great game? Why did I feel so good? What was my preparation like? Where was my mind at? What was my lead up in the week, in the hours before? And then the actual game. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And that comes from, and a lot of times for me, the lead up is a mental checklist going through, kind of evaluating after the game. And then the actual game, I review on film.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, you probably don't have video review of your meetings, but that'd
It'd be great if we did.
I know, right? But that would be a mental thing as well. And you can play through it and you can get a sense of what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And then how do I get better? Like that, it's so simple, but it takes that little piece of breaking it down in that little time, like a 15-minute time window of kind of just thinking through things. And then for me, obviously the post game review is a little bit longer, but I learn a lot from that as an athlete. But then I also learn a lot from just reviewing preparation. What did I eat? How much did I sleep? What was my recovery like through the week? All those things. And I think that's very applicable to the business world. And I don't think that people, like you were saying, I don't think a lot of people approach it that way. And I think that you can become so much better if you do approach anything that you're trying to achieve in a very systematic way, because it's just easier. I think that way. Maybe not easier, but it just makes more sense. But I'm also a very like that type of person.
Yeah. Well, you are talking my language. At this point, we've trained over 15,000 experts around the world. And one of the things we do in the live classes, or if it's done virtually, is get people practicing the skill. So if someone is trying to learn how to ask great questions, man, we're not going to be professorial and go on and on about the model. Within 5 or 6 minutes, we're going to explain the model and have people practicing it. And one of the things I found that speeds up that learning process is if 2 people are practicing it, say you get a class of 20 people, so there's 10 pairs. After somebody practices asking great questions using the model they can learn from us, the other person gives them one thing to keep and one thing to change every time. Because we find in the sports world, people are giving each other feedback all the time. Coach is running on the field yelling at you. But in the business world, everybody's too polite. Like they don't
It's
really tell
true.
you the real deal. What we found is really effective is us asking at every interval, at every learning opportunity, after every meeting, after every time you practice, what's one thing you can keep? What's one thing you would change about what I did? And then that speeds up the learning, I think.
For sure. I think that feedback is crucial to development and evolving and getting better.
Yes.
And I do think that in this, and that's something that I don't look forward to, that out of it, like when I'm done playing sports, being in a world that potentially is not as direct, because I'm just like, tell it to me straight,
Yes.
tell me exactly what I need to do here, what I did well, and I'll I'm going to do that. I'm going to work in that because you're telling me.
Okay.
So, uh, yeah, I think that's a really good technique.
Yeah, in the business world, can learn so much from professional athletes like you. So hey, I got one more question on this sort of how do we learn stuff, our first piece of content, and then we'll move to tracking things. As a former actuary, I cannot wait to talk about math and numbers and tracking things. But before we do that, speaking of learning things, I think you mentioned to me you started a business or you're involved with a business called Tame the Beast. I bet
Yeah.
you're
So
learning all kinds of business stuff.
yeah, so didn't start it, but got brought into the company last fall. Was a men's grooming company, and they brought me in as kind of a way to shift it into like the unisex space. And there was a lot of reasons that I chose to do it. I am very interested in business, and I am an athlete now, but looking to start to kind of feel out what I'm going to want to do post soccer, because that's going to happen. And I know that it's around the corner at some point. So yeah, I've joined on to that team, and it's been really cool to learn that business side of things and kind of like work on my brain instead of my body all the time,
Yeah.
which has been fun. So yeah, I think that in the beginning of my career, I was very timid to be interested or show any interest in anything outside of soccer, because I didn't want to seem like I wasn't fully 100% focused on soccer in my career and getting better and winning. And I come to learn it's almost better for me to have things outside of soccer to focus on, to give my attention to. And I've learned how to do both, because I didn't know how to in the past. It used to just be like, I need to give everything to soccer because I'm not good enough at it yet. Like I don't feel comfortable. And now it's kind of like getting interested in other things allows me to have this creative outlet, this business outlet, this intellectual outlet. And then on top of that, I still have the soccer, and I've gotten to a place where I feel really good about how I approach things, because I've created habits that allow me I know what I need to do to be my best, which I didn't know before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, gosh, I firmly believe the two go help each other, that being a business person and being an athlete, I just love being my old man, ultimate Frisbee self in playing and challenging myself. And I think it makes me a better business person when I'm trying to build a skill on the athletic field. And of course, your primary is athletics and you've got the secondary is business. They just both help each other.
For sure.
Well, let's move in. That's super cool. So Tame the Beast. Everybody check it.
Yes,
So-
it's a great company. We make great products. They're very eco-friendly and doing big things. I'm really proud of it and proud to be part of it and to be helping shape the direction of that company.
I suddenly wish I had more hair.
There's
There's no
Yeah,
taming
yeah.
this beast, this bald-headed beast.
body wash that you would love. There's a lot of different things that you can work into your shower routine. One shampoo.
All right, I'm going to check it out.
We
Product isn't really my thing, but the body wash, I could.
like it, promise.
All right. Well, so let's move to our second piece of content. And I know it's a weird name, but I titled this for us sort of how do you track leading indicators to get lagging indicator success? And in the business world, it is so normal to set annual goals. Our brain works annual cycles really well, sort of like weekly cycles. Like you'd never miss a Monday. You'd never miss a January 1st. Like it's New Year's. Our brain works that way. And so many business developers either are given a specific goal, like you're going to you need to bring in so many dollars this year or so many deals or so many matters projects, whatever. But then very few business people break that annual goal down, sort of what we would call a lagging indicator, into something that they can 100% control day in and day out. And I think athletes are so darn good at focusing on the short term. What can control today? Skill development, conditioning, recovery, dietary needs, all that kind of stuff. And really focusing on what you can do today. And then pretty soon all those days add up and you're playing for the gold in World Cup. But most business people just say, hey, I want to bring in $1 million. And then they don't really break it down to what they can control. And it ends up being a haphazard list of things that they end up doing. So tell me about lagging indicators. What are metrics you sort of keep as a long-term goal? But I want you to go even deeper. Like give us the Kelley O'Hara secrets on what do you track day in and day out, week in and week out to make sure you're on path. Go. I can't wait for this part.
Well, I love how your approach to business development really is like an athlete's approach to their craft. And I don't know personally how many people in the business development world would look at it with an athletic lens or an athlete's lens, but it does make sense because if you just knowing because it works as an athlete and I know that to reach a really big goal and to be successful at a certain specific moment, you have to walk it back so far to plan ahead and have that program set up so that you know that come that moment, you're ready. So yeah, there's tons of things that we do. Like we track our wellness, which is done through an app daily. You have to put in that tracks wellness and I guess like your ability to perform because it asks you to rate daily your soreness level,
Mm.
how tired or not tired you feel, how you feel like you slept the night before. What are the other ones? There's five different pieces to that. And then it gives you this overall score of like your readiness score, which tells you're ready for the day to perform. And that's more so, it's for us as athletes, but it's more so for our coaches and our clubs and our teams to know how to kind of create and structure practice in terms of what we need and what's going to be too much, what's going to be too little, what things do we need to hit. So there's that sort of thing. We track GPS, we track heart rate during practice. And then after practice, we go back into the app and we put down how hard we think that we perceive the practice to be. And then those are the actual tracking metrics, I would say. Oh, you can put how many hours you think you slept the night before, those sorts of things. So there's all these different pieces that are there. If you're ready to practice, how ready you are to practice, and then how hard practice was. And that allows our strength and conditioning coaches to get this picture over time of kind of the cadence that they want us to be going through leading up to either the weekend game or to an Olympic final. And that's kind of like a very specific day in and day out thing that then creates this large picture. And our last strength and conditioning coach with the national team, she loved data. She loved the numbers. She loved tracking everything because she had so many different people. And then she could build this model that showed this is a model to success, which I kind of geek out on. I think it's really cool. We all complain and get annoyed with having to do it every day, getting nagged to do it. But at the end of the day, it's proven that it does equal success. So those are I would say the team requirements in terms of tracking.
Gosh, this is so rich, Kelley. I wish you could like parachute into some of our meetings and trainings of this because the business world can learn so much.
Have me come talk because it is true. So that's the team required. But then for me, for instance, right now in this period of time where we don't know when we're going to need to be ready to play again. And I'm kind of in this like weird off season. That's not really an off season. I was game fit. And then we have this pause. I've been tracking all of my workouts every single day, even if it's just like a recovery day, how many steps I've taken. And I've been wearing an Apple Watch, which I really never wore before, but in this moment in time. Yeah, exactly. I saw your husband on.
We're in the club.
It's been, yeah, because it's like, I want to know, I need that feedback and I want to know what I'm doing. And I want to look back and be like, okay, that was a really good week and I feel really good. And I'm at this place because I did X, Y, and Z. And then a year from now, I can say, what did I do in that moment of time? And how can I replicate that to get the same outcome that I want years down the road? Well, I love that kind of stuff. I kind of geek out on it.
Well, me too. And for me, I love the math of it because I was an actuary a long time ago and I love statistical correlations. As we train people in business development now, it's just absolutely silly to me that somebody would set an annual goal. I want to bring $1 million in this year, whatever it is, but not have weekly goals.
And it's the how. It's like, okay, you want to win up or you want to bring in $1 million. Well, how are you going to do it? So I have a funny story about that. In college, it was either my junior or senior year. I think it was my senior year. My assistant coach, she pulled me aside, and at Stanford, even the first year I got there, all the older players would be like, you'd go into the season, you'd be like, we want to win a national championship. And it was just this thing that we said because everybody wanted to win it. Everyone wanted to win the national championship. But then there was no like, okay, but how are we going to do it? And obviously we practiced how to plan, that sort of thing. But within the team, and even within myself, I didn't have a specific plan. I was just like, yeah, we want to win the national championship. And my assistant coach pulls me aside at the beginning of the season before any games had started. She said, this is going to sound really simple, but she goes, Kelley, she was like, you want to have an undefeated season, right? And I was like, yeah, that's what I wanted my whole college career. Like, I want to win a national championship. I want an undefeated season. She was like, do you want to know how you do that? And I was like, yeah,
No.
You have the secret and you haven't told me yet. And she just looks at me and she goes, you win every single game, one game at a time. And I was like, well, yeah, and in that moment I was annoyed because I was like, well, duh, we know that. But then she was like, no, you have to approach every single game like it is the only game. There's no game before it and there's no game after it. You have to win every single game. And we ended up having an undefeated season, lost in the national championship, which is major bummer on my part. But it was just I never really approached it that way. Obviously, you think that you look at it in a way of like, I want to win every game, obviously. But I think that kind of turned a switch in my mind of this game is all that matters. Prepare for this game. And that's it. Finish the job, check this box, and then move on to the next. Don't look at who you're playing 3 weeks from now. So yeah, I think that that applies to so many things within my world from then on. Just like, how do you go from saying, oh, I want to win an Olympic gold medal? Well, how are you going to do it? So many different things you have to do.
Yes. Well, I want to dig in even deeper because I want to decode some things that you said for our audience. So here's the deal. And I'm quoting you to no end on this because you've had just a smidge of success as an athlete. So many of our clients, before they go through our classes or before they read the snowball system, they might feel odd about tracking something subjective. And that is, I'm challenging everybody listening or watching this right now, throw that out the window. I would rather have you track, rather have our audience track something that's important subjectively than something unimportant accurately. And your examples around, to give us a ranking of perceived effort. Tell us, what were some of your tell me some of the things that are subjective that you track.
Well, I mean, I guess you would say they're subjective, like how sore do I feel? How tired do I feel? I guess that's subjective. It's not
totally
a way that you can be, this is specifically how sore I am. Yeah, those, how much you think you slept. How well do you think you slept? That's the thing.
That's exactly right. And things like that for us as business developers are things like picking 3 things a week. We call them most important things, or MITs. Picking 3 things a week that come heck or high water, you're going to get those 3 things done. It could be outreach for somebody you met, but they haven't responded back yet. You just want to add value in their life in some ways. Or it could be something specific like sending a proposal to a client or whatever. And those kind of things that there's a hair of subjectivity in that because you're trying to pick what are your top three most important things, right? It could be one of 50, but picking those three things, maybe you're right, maybe they're not. You won't know for a year, but there's some subjectivity to that, but that's okay. That's a good thing. And
Is
then
the is the thinking behind that you just want to identify what you think is the most important and therefore and then you can track it and you can kind of see how that evolves over time. Like, oh, in the beginning of the year, I thought these three things and they kind of fall under these three categories were the most important and that now I'm actually seeing this is what is more important and I'm getting more out of that.
you got it. Well, it really fits with what you said before about always, as an athlete, always improving. So, as people go on in their business development journey, they might have thought speaking at one conference would just be bringing all kinds of different leads and business and things like that. And after you try it twice, maybe it turns out it wasn't good as this other one that didn't feel as sexy, but actually was more productive of your time. Well, you don't find that out till you try it. The MIT process is really powerful because before you get selected to speak at that conference, you got to do some research, find out who makes the selection, develop a relationship with them, see what they're trying to get across at the conference, make a pitch. That there's a series of proactive things that have to happen to actually just speak at it, to try it. And if somebody doesn't do proactive things like that, a whole year could go by and they miss the boat. And that's where that sort of picking three things a week, three MITs, maybe they're right, maybe they're not, but you're really trying to be intentional on what are the three most important things as opposed to the three easiest. Or just answering all your emails. You can track that clearly. Did my inbox go to zero or not? Well, that might be
Yeah,
as important as reaching out to somebody you haven't met yet. So
I do. Yeah, I think that's great. I like that you, the fact that you say most important things because it just makes it that there's meaning behind it as opposed to like, I want to answer my emails. Well, no, you want to answer your emails and you want to really focus on this one email because this is falls under, yeah, I think that's great.
you
That's very
got it.
smart. I need to apply it to my life.
There you go. Well, the thing that how we define it, so in our audience knows is we actually have a little mnemonic, BIG. Well, so when you're picking your three MITs, pick something that is going to have a big impact on your life. That's the B. For the I, write it so that it's 100% in your control. So you wouldn't have to say have lunch with Jane, but you'd say ask for lunch with Jane and, be clear on how she'd benefit. And then G, it has to be growth oriented. It's not about keeping something you got, but it's about expansions in some way. Because there's everybody will do the to-dos that people are asking for. These are the things that are a bit more proactive. So big impact in our control and growth oriented. That's really, if you do three of those a week, man, over a week, that's 150 some a year. Over
Yeah.
10 years, 1,500 things you did that you wouldn't have done otherwise. And all of a sudden your life's totally different. So
I really should apply these to my off the field things because I feel like as an athlete, I'm so good at controlling and I know what I need to do on the field. But in this next chapter of life and even in the current chapter of building relationships and figuring out what I want to do next, I think that these are very applicable to how I could get down that road as opposed to being like, yeah, I'm interested in that. But how do I go from A to B or A to Z? That's that. Hey,
well, so let's go a hair deeper in this idea of measurement. And I think there's a nuance in what you said because I think you're so used to it, it's normal, but this is not normal for our audience. First of all, tracking leading indicators or things in our control on a short-term basis, daily, weekly is not a normal thing, but we've talked about how powerful it is. The other thing is for folks that are really busy, it can feel like a lot of work to track this themselves. And so here you are, one of the top athletes in the world, and you're the one in the app. Your assistant's not in the app, writing out how sorry you feel or whatever. You're in there looking at the data. You're putting the data in. You're reviewing it at night going, man, I really did have a lot of steps there. I really have my GPS. I really did run farther than I thought on that field workout or whatever. And I think it's really important. And this is a guess, so there's a question at the end of it. My guess is it's really important for the person that's striving to get better to actually get in and collect the data or put in the data themselves and review it themselves, as opposed to try to give that to somebody on their team to do. So what are your thoughts on that?
certainly agree. Because I think there's this reassurance or just a confirmation of what is actually being done, and how does this make me feel, and where do I feel like I'm at, that sort of thing. I mean, for me, even down to like tracking, it goes even to the minute by minute things. When I'm working out, I'm keeping track of how fast I'm running these. Am I hitting this goal? Am I achieving these numbers? And that is this feedback of, am I where I need to be? And if not, okay, I need to change something. And I mean, there's no way you can do it by having somebody else do it. And it's almost like it's almost kind of I don't know, like therapeutic exercise in knowing this is my current state, and this is how I got here. And then what do I need to change, or what do I need to get better at, or what do I need to tweak next week or even tomorrow to tick on and to get a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's no way you can have somebody else do it, because you're doing it for your personal growth and your development, and to learn about your habits and what works, doesn't. And somebody else doing it isn't going to help.
Exactly. So you just helped hundreds or thousands of people for the.
And it is, sometimes it is just, I even had on my to-do list last week, like, go through and write down your workouts and,
Yeah.
and tracked on my watch. So I know what I've done every day. But it's like, okay, I'm going to have I told myself at the beginning of this whole weird off season period, I'm going to have this, I'm going to track it because I want to know what I'm doing, and I want to know how I feel and what I can do to you want to be able to replicate it too. And just kind of, I don't know. Yeah. I think that it's very important to do it yourself.
I know from our conversations, you take diet really seriously, and you're even thinking about a cookbook at some point. Tell me the latest, because I know you talked with some of our mutual friends.
Yes. No. So I've wanted to write a cookbook for a while, just because food plays such a crucial part in my life as an athlete, but then in the emotional sense of, I just really enjoy the time spent around the table. Like, some of my favorite times is just having a meal with my family, or we spend so much time in the meal room with the national team, eating food. So it's just the camaraderie, the community, the time spent around the table, and food is such like a unifying thing. So those are the two reasons that I've always wanted to write one. And I started to put it together a couple years ago. I've kind of been keeping track. And that's what I'm saying. I need to apply these different ideas and approaches to creating the cookbook, because I've done it in a very casual way, like recipes that I've started to perfect and that sort of thing, and kind of my little anecdotes about them. So I've been doing it for a while, but now I'm in a place where I really want it to happen, and I want this to become a reality. And I need to start approaching it in a way of very methodically each week. How do I get from this being a Word doc on my computer to actually being a physical cookbook? So I think after this call, I'm going to sit down and make a plan and start to actually hone in on it and hold myself accountable, because it's been more of, I want to do it. This is something I really want to do, but I haven't taken the right steps.
Having tackled the idea of wanting to write a book. Yeah, I actually applied the 3MIT system this is going back years ago, but I had my normal BD 3MITs, and for a short period of time, couple months, before at some point, writing the book just takes on a life of its own, because you get an agent, you get a book deal, and then there's deadlines, and then it just happens. But the part of pushing that rock up the hill to get to that point is really hard. So I took several months and did the 3MIT process, not only for my normal BD stuff to keep the business running and growing like crazy, but also just for the book. And what I love about the 3MIT process is, if you get 10 minutes next week, you can pick 3 things to still do. Maybe it's 3 quick phone calls and 2 phone calls and email or whatever. But if you get 10 hours, you can just pick 3 things that scale up to 10 hours. And I could see you applying your athletic system to, I'm going to get this book going and just killing it.
I hope so. That's the plan. I think, yeah, I mean, I think that it's something that I know, if I actually sit down and start to apply real time to, that it can become a reality. And it's something that I really want.
So we've talked about how any complex skill is both learned and earned. We've talked about this idea that you got to take big, huge annual or long-term goals and break them down into what can you control today, this week, to keep moving. Now I want to talk about mindset and preparation. And I'm super interested to go deep with you on this. When I think of business development audience, it's real easy for whatever reason for people to prepare immensely for delivery meetings, for things they've already been hired to do. A client, we need to cover these three things if we're going to hit the deadline and prepare for all that. And then for some reason with business development meetings, people sort of wing it or like, we'll meet in the Uber on the way to the client meeting and prepare with our colleagues there. No way. We've got to prepare maybe even more for business development meetings because if we get those right, the ball starts rolling downhill. So tell me about how do you, both individually and as a team, how do you prepare for high stakes games? Because I think there's an analog there for high stakes business meetings.
Yeah, I think the best example of this in my world is our preparation leading into this last World Cup on set pieces. And it's a part of the game that people know about, but they probably don't understand. It's really the only time in soccer where there's specific rules for each player and in this specific time, whether it's a corner kick, free kick, it's even throw in, goal kick. And we used to only apply them to certain set pieces, but then we would identify times in the game where we said, like, this is a set piece. This is where we can know specifically what we need to do. Everyone knows their role, that sort of thing. And we went over set pieces more hours than I could even tell you, to the point where we'd be like, again, we're doing this again. Like, we know. And I was reading this book leading into the World Cup called The Power of Habit. And I realized once I read it, got to the World Cup, we did incredibly well on set pieces. I think we only let up one goal on a set piece, just pretty unheard of in a World Cup. And I remember in the World Cup being like, it all makes sense. Our coaches made us practice set pieces so many times to the point where we could have done them in our sleep. And it was completely automatic. Like, there was no thinking. There was just doing and executing. And it seems simple, but it's, to me, this is the only team, and even really the 4-year like lead up to a specific tournament where our set pieces were so incredibly fine tuned because of the hours that we put in. And I think that the coaches actually tracked how many hours they allotted to practice time to do that, and even video and that sort of thing. And it really is true. Like, there is something to be said about just being able to execute and not think. And especially if you think about the World Cup, it's like the most high stakes, the most nervous you're ever going to be for a game, the most intense pressure, and then just being able to just churn it out, do exactly what you need to do, and no thinking, just doing. Which I don't know. I guess in business development, I mean, I'm not sure. I think it is applicable because there's so many, and I say, like, there was no thinking, just doing. We thought, and we were able to just like go through a checklist, boom, boom. We know exactly what we're doing. Everyone's in their place. Everyone's on the right cue. Everyone's on the right like tempo, step, that sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah,
Well, it's incredibly applicable. I mean, obviously I'm smiling from ear to ear because again, I'm going to quote you for years with this, but so many people think I'll appear to be inauthentic if I'm robotic or rehearsed because I practice something. So I want to hit that directly with you. When you prepare for something to such an extent you can do it in your sleep, like you talked about, it doesn't mean you have to do it that way. If a better path appears right in front of you, you can deviate. But the fact that you've memorized a certain path or play makes you even stronger when a little tweak happens and you take advantage of it. I mean, wouldn't you say?
yeah, I would say so, because we can prepare, but then there's no telling what could happen. But that's to the point of like, we just prepared so much. So in practice, every time you're taking your repetition on a set piece, the ball is going to go a little bit differently. The speed's going to be different, that sort of thing. So there's all these different variables, but then you just become so tuned in, or so finely tuned to adapt to exactly what you need to do in that moment. And I think that just comes from practice and repetition. And I don't think, I mean, when it comes to meeting and that sort of thing, it's just it's almost like a comfort level of being confident and feeling like you know what you're doing. I don't think confidence or being relaxed or just being very focused comes off as disingenuous. I think it comes off as like a really good trait as a business person.
Right. Well, it's almost it's the opposite of what a lot of people think. It actually shows confidence because when you walk in, you feel prepared. In business development, the sets are the equivalent is how do I ask a great question? And did I prepare given this environment, this time with this person in that industry and the people we know or don't know in common, what they're dealing with? Did I craft a question set to walk in there and be engaging? Did I develop it? Did I design a meeting where I'm going to add value in the very first meeting I met with that person? And then a million what ifs. What if they bring up money? What if they say we're expensive? What if they want to bring their boss in? What if the meeting takes half the time or double the time? These are all scenarios that we talk about in our training. We got a specific process called dynamic meeting prep that instead of somebody sort of the normal way is sort of rehearsing in your mind. I've got these 20 PowerPoint slides and I'm going to say this on slide 1 and then I'm going to say this on slide 2. And it's this real static linear thing is instead breaking it down into sets basically and say, if this, then that. And I'm ready. I'm prepared. I'm confident. The game isn't going to go in this just one thing that you can predict. The game's going to be set up, or you tell me, like there's probably just dozens and dozens of little 5 and 10 and 20-second segments put together, and you're ready for anything that happens, I would guess.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's exactly it. Not even just set pieces, but just throughout the game, whatever system we're playing, whatever the other team is starting to present or the ebb and the flow of the game. Oh, we're having to be on defense a lot. Like, how do we handle this? What do we go back to? What is our like grounding or like our centering phrase or word or look or whatever on the field? So there's so many things that we consider and practice ahead of time so that in the moment you can be your best. And I think that when it comes to business development and meetings, I think that coming off not as rehearsed, but coming off as confident and prepared shows that you actually care. I think it actually comes off as more genuine because it shows that like this is meaningful to you. And because I've been in that position in the business world that in my different time doing different things and being involved in different meetings, being prepared shows that you put in the time and that you care. And I think it's like I said, yeah, I think it's way more genuine. And I think that it's probably one of the most important things when it comes to actually building a relationship and especially when it comes to initial meetings.
Yeah. Yeah. And because everything, I've failed to say this, I should have said up front, but because everything we teach, whether it's in our training systems or the Snowball System book, it's all about being authentic and being 100% helpful to the other person, that it almost requires that you're playing at this higher level, that you're putting the prep in, that you're digging in and you're adding something that's a little different, a little more meaty. So, hey, let me ask you one more question on this topic because I'm just personally interested in this. I don't know we haven't ever talked about this.
Oh gosh.
So I know. But I'm like more than any other question, we've done a lot of prep for this. More than any other question, I couldn't wait to hear what you'd say to this. So with that as a setup, let's say you prepared for a high stakes game. You're going to play a match that you really wanted more than any other. So this would be akin to a big high stakes finalist meeting in business development. Like you're going to win or lose all the work or whatever on this big finalist meeting. So it's like that for our folks. So anyway, you really want this one. Well, you want them all, but you want this one a little more. And let's say you prepared and you did all you could, but for whatever reason, you get X many minutes into the match and it's not going the way you want, or you let somebody get by you when you were prepared for that. You were ready for them to do what they did. And you just didn't quite react in time, whatever. So whatever happens, either an event or a string of events don't go the way you want. As Kelley O'Hara, one of the best athletes in the world, what do you do mentally to recover from that?
I mean, for me, it's like screwed it up and you did a number of things wrong, potentially. And kind of going back to the beginning, you have to control what you can control. And as an individual on the field, for me, it's like, okay, then the next time I'm going to win my next tackle. I'm going to complete my next pass. And those are the most simple things as a soccer player you can do: complete a pass, win a tackle, and you have to almost win yourself back into the game, right? So like, I'm going to complete a pass. That's a little win. And then you build on that. And okay, next time I'm going to make an even riskier pass, but I'm going to complete it. So it's like, it's bringing your confidence back in by ticking off these little wins. And the only way you do it is by doing it one at a time.
That's funny because of the magic of podcasting, even though the James Clear interview, he wrote Atomic Habits, hasn't occurred yet in the podcast sequence. Actually, I've already taped it. And he talked about how you can change your identity. And he's talking on the grand life scale. We're talking about now on the game scale or a meeting. You can change your identity by just starting to do the tiniest things that are in the direction of what you want to believe about yourself. And he used this phrasing. I thought it was so interesting. He said, every time you do, that's a little vote to yourself that you are that person. And basically that's how you described it. And as an athlete myself, I've never had I don't think a good system for changing this. And I think your ability or your system of like, bring it all the way back to just that next pass or that next tackle or whatever. And I'm going to do that well. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3 or 4 of those happen and you feel good about your game again. It sounds
And you're the best player on the field at that time. Like, you're like, I'm doing the best I've done. So yeah, it is about, one, you want to win the overall game, but how do you win the overall game? You complete your pass, you win your tackle, you do the little pieces right along the way. And yes, there's going to be times when you mess up, but as long as the little rights outweigh the wrongs, you're usually going to win.
Yeah. Well, and let's put a bow on that for our audience. So if we prepared for a meeting, we've done all the right things, and all of a sudden, typically, I think because of our own expectations, our audience's own expectations, we're not getting as far as fast as we wanted or whatever, then just pull it back to just doing the next right thing. It sounds like would be your advice in a business context.
For sure.
Tell us a story about how habits have impacted your life.
I think the one story I want to go to, and it goes kind of back to a time of trial and struggle when I wasn't at my best. And I feel like that's sometimes when I figure out what are the most successful habits and how habits really are so helpful in getting through the valleys of life. Leading into the last World Cup last spring, I had ankle surgery in the fall of 2018 and was coming back and kind of had a hiccup with the return to play and had to be out for basically 2 months leading into the World Cup. And the World Cup started beginning of June, and I wasn't back playing until beginning of May, I think. So I had this plan of how I thought my World Cup preparation was going to go, from a football sense and training and working out and in the amount of minutes I was going to get to play. And that all got washed away as soon as I was back at square one, kind of with my ankle. And that was another time when I just had to take a step back, look at the picture and say, okay, my big goal is World Cup win. I want to win and I want to be on that field playing. How do I get from here to there? Like, how do I get from not being able to kick the soccer ball right now to winning a World Cup? And I just decided and I figured out the little things that I could do. What could I do? I could do my bike workouts. I could do my lifting. I could do these little things that I knew I needed to be doing on my way to getting to a place where I could play again. It might not be. And then I think the biggest thing was that I couldn't play soccer and I wasn't getting those minutes. And I was so stressed that I wasn't going to feel my confident self come World Cup time, because I didn't just have that, like, just those minutes putting in. So I would sit on the ground in my living room and I would go through, basically not meditate, but I would visualize the games and I would visualize myself playing in specific moments and that sort of thing. And that was kind of the habit that I developed leading into the World Cup, because I couldn't be playing. I wasn't actually playing. I just had to basically visualize it. And in reading a book about habits, I realized that even telling my brain and having my brain work through these decision-making moment in games was the way that I was going to be peaking and at my best come World Cup time. And thankfully, when I got back on the field, I felt great and I felt confident. I felt good because I had been doing the work. Even when I couldn't do the physical work, I could do the mental work.
If you're feeling inspired after listening to Kelley's incredible story and you want to courageously push further in your own career, then I recommend watching this video next. It'll help you break down barriers and practice the right skills to take you to the next level. Thanks for listening. Talk more soon.